Hi everyone, so welcome back. Okay, so last time we were placing lights and cameras and a plane to get a little bit of perspective as to what we are building and modeling. And it's always a good idea to have a few lights and a camera and a plane in the scene so that you can actually look at what you're building as you are building it. You can see how it works with the textures and things like that. So we've done that, and this is the redshift view that we currently have. So what we want to do is we want to continue modeling. We'll keep the redshift view here, but for now, let's just go back to the standard layout, which is up here. So we're just going to hit standard. So now this is the layout that we currently have. Now for us right now at the minute, what we're going to do is we will be going back to the redshift view, but I'm going to remove the plane for the time being. So I'm just going to remove that. So I'm just going to hit that button there and just see on and off. So that's how that works. And here on the right hand side, it's a bit of a mess at the minute. So let's just order ourselves a little bit. So what I'm going to do is going to select the camera and the lights all together and hit Alt G. This is going to group them into a null group. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call this null group dot composition. I'll just call it compo for the time being. I like to sort of keep it shorthand. So null.compo. Now this cube's not a cube, it's actually a speaker now. That's what we built. So I'm just going to call this the speaker. And I'll just leave it as that for the time being. So now we've closed the plane, and also I don't want to see these lights and cameras here because they do get in the way. So I'm just going to switch that off. Just go here on the right hand side and click the top button there, which would just basically remove it from the viewport. So now we've got a clean model back again, and that's fine. Now if we want to go back to redshift layout, we can always go back to the redshift layout and have a look. So that's what it looks like at the minute. So now what we're going to do is go back to the standard model, and what we are going to do is we're going to introduce the subsurface division, and I'll describe what that means. Now subsurface division, you can find that here on the right hand side. Just go here and select that. Now what does subsurface division do? Well, actually it does exactly what the name says. It divides the surface into multiple bits and pieces, so it subdivides the surface, so it makes the model a little bit more organic, a little bit smoother. If you're coming out of the 3ds Max world, it's called turbo smooth. So if you're familiar with 3ds Max, that's what this is. So turbo smooth equals subdivision surface here in 3ds in Cinema 4D world. Okay, so now what happens? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the speaker, raise it, and dump it right under the subdivision surface and see what happens. Yeah. Okay, so that's not a speaker that we would like to have. So I'm just going to switch off the subdivision service for the time being, come back here. So what we've got to do is we're going to have to create some chamfers or some lines at the top and at the bottom so that we retain the shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back here, and I am going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to select the line option. And one way to do this is to basically grab the top line, copy it, and place it down the bottom, or simply go to the left hand side and find your, let me just change this view, brush selection view, go to the knife. If the knife's already is not there, but you can go to the loop cut, right? So now as you moving the loop cut up and down these verticals, you're going to see a horizontal line appear. So you can go ahead and click anywhere you like for the time being. So we're just going to click there for the time being. So now what happens if we go back to subdivision surface, see how it's sort of made it a little bit smoother now. Now if you compare it to what's happening at the bottom, oh, because we've got the symmetry on, symmetrical cut, it did the bottom one as well. So let me remove that for the time being so that we can see what's actually going on. So let's try that again. So if I go at the top, and I'm going to hit subdivision surface, see the top one's a little bit smoother, but the bottom one is still a mess. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to hit the symmetrical cut once more. We're going to do a Control Z, right? And we're going to basically keep the subdivision surface on so we can actually see what's going on. And now we're going to do the top and the bottom at the same time. So we're going to basically move the cursor up and down one of the verticals until we are happy with where we want to land. So let us do this for the time being. And notice how straight away we're getting this nice curved line here happening at the top. It's much, much better than it was there before. So now let's have a look how that looks through the render view. So let's just go to the render layout. And let's have a look. Zoom in. Oh, okay. So we always have to press play here. Now, okay, it doesn't look all that great because it's still a little bit rough, right? So we're still not getting that clean surface view here at the top. Let us just reduce the light a little bit. I think the key light's a little bit strong there, so we can actually see a little bit more what's happening with the surfaces here. Okay, so you can see how it's like a little bit broken up. So what we've got to do is we've got to still work a little bit more on the speaker, but this time we're going to basically remove the subsurface option here, and I'm going to add a line on the top end. So now the way I'm going to do that, we can do that in many different ways. One way I like to do it is basically by going here to the surface. So we're going to select the polygon mode. So we're going to select that. We're going to go over here. We're going to make sure the brush selection is on, and we're going to highlight the top. So once we highlight the top, on the left-hand side, we are going to get this inset option. So again, this is one way of doing it. You can do it in many different ways, but this is one way. So I like doing it this way. So I'm going to go here. And now with this option selected, we can point at any point around the selection and just left mouse button and drag it in. As we drag it in, you're going to notice how the top is now coming in and out. See, like that? So we're creating another version of the top, if that makes sense. So now if I go over here, and I'm just going to leave it there for the time being. I'm going to move my mouse cursor all the way to the subdivision surface, and I'm going to turn it on and have a look at what's going on. So notice how in the viewport of the render, if I can expand that out a little bit more, the viewport of the render is giving me this nice smooth edge. Now, if I don't feel like that's exactly the edge that I want, I can basically move the bottom line up and down. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and select the edge. So I'm going to go to edge mode, select the edge, hit UL, and that's going to give me the edge there, the one that we just created before. And I'm just going to move it a little bit higher up to get a bit more of a sharper edge at the top. Right, so if I go all the way up, it's going to be super sharp. If I go a little bit down, it's going to give me that nice sort of curved look there. Okay, so that's kind of what I want. Now the other option also is if we go to the top end. So let me just clean the model a little bit. Let me just remove the subsurface division, subdivision surface option there. So now another way of doing it is by selecting this new inner circle that we already have. So if I go click one of the edges, go UL, and I click it there, and if I go to the scale option, I can scale it out or in. So now I'm scaling it back out a little bit closer to the edge. I'm going to click the subdivision surface. And the way I like to play this, and I know it looks a little bit messy, is I like to keep my render option here happening while I'm actually trying to scale the edge to get it right how I like it and how I want it. Now here, I think it's a little bit too sharp, so I'm just going to bring it in a little bit. Maybe I'm going to drop the bottom one a little bit. So I'm going to click the bottom loop, and I'm just going to drag it down a little bit. Or maybe let's go up there. Okay. Now I'm just going to move the render view a little bit so I can have a fresh look at what's going on. It's a little bit still too sharp for my liking, so I'm just going to grab that loop and drop it a little bit further down. and also the inner edge. I'm just going to pull that, pinch that in a little bit as well. So let me just click one of the items, UL, highlight it, scale tool, and bring it in a little bit. Now, not too much. And I don't want the model to be deformed too much, so I want to keep it nice and clean as well. So yeah, so you find and I usually like to find a particular angle and just use that as my reference point so I can get that nice curved look at the top. So you can see how it's curved a little bit at the top, so it's not super sharp. So, and that works for us for the time being, and we're just going to leave that for the minute. We're going to do the same thing down the bottom. I believe the bottom part is still pinched to the extreme, so I'm going to go do the same thing, and again highlight the polygon, click it, and do the inset, and just pull it in a little bit there until I get that nice curved look. Done. Okay, so that's that. Next, what I would like to do is also, if I go back to my F5 and go back to standard view, notice how here on the model there's this like indentation, a little indentation happening. So what we want to do is we want to basically replicate that, and what we're going to do is we're going to basically create a line that's coming across horizontal and then pinch it inwards to create the view of an indented piece. So let me just demonstrate that. So what I'm going to do is going to go back to my perspective view, and I'm going to create another line that's coming across. Let me do that right now. So here's, let me remove symmetry. Okay. And I believe it's somewhere there, not 100% certain, but it seems it should be somewhere here. Okay. Okay, let me remove my snap-on because it seems to be snapping everywhere. So I think it's somewhere in between here somewhere. So let us do that for the time being. And now I'm just going to remove subdivision surface for the time being, and I'm going to go back to F5 and zoom in a little bit. So you can see the new line here is in orange. So what I want to do is I want to go to the move tool, highlight it, UL, which is there, and just drop it a little bit so that we can line it up perfectly. So let's find where the move icon is. Here it is, and just move it until we find the right location and just leave it there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to turn on the subdivision surface again there, and have a look at the model and see how that looks for the time being. Yeah, that looks really good. So now what we need to do is we need to create a bevel. So let me just remove subdivision surface because there's too many lines, and let's go to perspective view. It's much easier to see from this perspective. So this is our new line. So what we're going to do is create two lines, one on either side of this line, and then we're going to move this line inwards to create that indentation. So let's, so it's highlighted already. So let's go straight to bevel and just create. Now there's 8 subdivisions here, so that's a lot of subdivisions. So Control Z, let's go back. Let's reduce this down to 1, right? And now let's just create a nice little bevel here. Scroll in a bit. So there we go. So we've got this little indentation. So we're going to grab this inner line and then we're going to pull it inwards, and that's going to create the view as if there's a indentation happening there. Now it's 0.16 centimeters. So we're just going to just remember that for the time being. And what we're going to do is we're going to go straight in the innermost line, which is here. Control L, highlight it, and now we are going to pull it inwards. So let me zoom out so you can see what I'm doing. So go to the scale tool and highlight this arrow, the green arrow is going to be your Z and X axis plane. So these two, right? So don't go for this one or the blue one. Go for the green one here, and then just pull it in. Now, if we pull it out, it's going to jump out. What we want is we want to pull it in. So as we pull it in, it's going to go right inwards into the speaker itself. Okay, so let's do something like that. Okay, so now let's have a look at how that looks once subdivision surface gets plugged in. Now notice how it's very rounded. We don't want it to be so rounded, so we're going to go and remove the subdivision surface for the sec, and we're going to create another chamfer on this line and on this line. That way we can have a more sharper edge as you get closer to this indentation. So let's go ahead, click one of the lines, UL, there it is. And what we're going to do now is just simple. One way to do that is like that, where you copy and paste and just drag it up and down. Another way is to go over here on the left hand side, do a loop path cut, and just go ever so close to the orange line and just select. Do the same thing with the top one. There. Now if you go hit subdivision surface, it's a little bit sharper, right? So you don't have that super smooth angle here. It's a little bit sharper. Now, I think the if I remove the lines like that, now this is how it looks at the minute. Okay, right? Now I think it's a little bit too wide, so what we're going to do is we're going to adjust it. So let's go back to click NB to get the lines. Let's remove subdivision surface so it's much cleaner so we can see what we're doing here. See how wide that gap is? So we're going to narrow that gap. And the way we're going to do that is simply by clicking edge mode, go straight to the brush selection, click, we need to click the speaker first. So the model, so Cinema 4D needs to know what you're trying to do. The fact that we already have the bottom one highlighted already, what we can do is just use that, time save, and just drag it up a little bit. We can do the same thing for the top one and drag it down a little bit. So select one of the edges, UL, make sure you click it before you move, and make sure it's all highlighted. You can fly around the model to make sure that he actually is, and then just highlight the green arrow, maybe zoom in a little bit so you can see what you're doing, and just drag it down a little bit there. Okay, now let's hit subdivision surface once more and see what's happening. Now, a good thing to do is that once you know what your model's doing, and the light blue edges here is actually the model without the subdivision surface switched on. So if you can visually separate that with your eyes, you can basically keep subdivision surface on while you're modeling it. So now if I keep my subsurface on, I can actually scroll it down and get it closer to the edge, right? And I can do the same thing for the bottom part as well. So I can do the same thing, get it up a little bit, there. Okay, so now if I remove all the lines, so NA, and click anywhere on the right hand side, okay, that's way better. That's a lot better. Now we've got something that resembles that indentation line that we're after. So let's go back to F5, right? So that indentation line was right there, and we've kind of got really close. I think we've nailed it. So what we have to do is do the same thing for the top part. So let's go ahead and middle mouse button click, go straight to the top, whoop, Alt, remember, and do the same thing for the top part. So first things first, let's go straight to the speaker. We're going to select the speaker. So we've got this, NB to get our lines back, remove the subsurface division, so we don't need that anymore. Let's go straight to F5, and this is the front view. Now the picture at the back is really bright, so let's decrease the brightness of the back image. So let's go to configure, view configure, and what we're going to do now is go to back and increase the transparency so it's not so in your face, if that makes sense. So let's go straight at the top. There's that line, the indentation line, it's right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here and go to the line cut tool here, path cut, and we're going to align the new line right on top of that one and click. Once we've done that, we can stay in this view. We've done the bottom one in the perspective view. Here we can stay in this view for a bit, and we could do it from the front view. So let's go ahead. Now that it's already selected, we can go hit bevel. Remember, the bevel was 0.016 is still there. So what we can do is just simply add another line. Notice how it got unselected, so let's just make sure that it's selected again. Okay, UL, click and selection, hit the bevel, and anywhere on the screen, just left mouse button and drag, and you should get 1.8 is close, 1.6 is what we wanted. Let's try to hit 1.6, 1.9. Oh, that's very, very tricky. Okay, let's go down a little bit. Oh, there. Oh, there. Let's leave it there for the time being. Okay, 0.16. So, you know, remember that we were able to adjust it as well afterwards. So this gives us that indentation, that the beginnings of the indentation that we need. So next thing is we want to go really, really close and hit the middle line. So let's remove ourselves from the bevel. So let's just go straight to the brush selection. Select the middle line, UL, okay, and click. Move your mouse away. If the orange is there, that means you've selected it. Okay, so once you've done that, let's get out of the side view so you can see what's going on. Let's go straight to perspective view and just move it up a little bit. Go to the scale. And now remember, we are scaling inwards. So that means we're going to stay on the ZX plane. And we are going to basically grab the green arrow, green angle, and just pull it in. Now when we pull it out, you can see what's happening. If you pull it in, it's cutting it a little bit. So it's cutting inside, right? So now let's have a closer look at that. That's what's happening. Okay, let's turn subdivision surface on. Again, the same thing happened here as it happened down there, down the bottom part. So you're getting this super curvature happening. So what we can do is you can basically grab one of these edges. If you double click it, you should be able to highlight the entire edge. And you can bring it in closer, or you can also add another line here to basically level it up, which is what I'm going to do right at the minute. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the cut tool, and I'm going to get it nice and close there. So that's going to give me that smoothened bit there. And also the same time here. Now I'm focusing on the blue lines. I know it might be a little bit difficult for you to see, but after a little while you're going to get used to it, where the black lines are the actual lines of the subdivision surfacing, whereas the blue line is the actual model itself without the subdivision surfacing. So let me just show you that. So these are the blue lines, the original blue lines, and they're going to stay there. Once you hit subdivision surface, you're going to get the black lines. They're a bit overwhelming, but you can sort of see here that you're getting the line very close to the original here. So I'm just going to go just a little bit underneath there. Now you've smoothened this out. It's much, much straighter, but it's still really, really wide. So what we're going to do is we're going to go grab the top line here, UL. Okay, so we've got that line selected. We are going to go to the move tool, and we're just going to bring it down a little bit slightly there. So I'm going to narrow the gap, and we can do the same thing for the bottom line here. So remember, there's two lines here. Let me remove the subdivision surface. So there's two lines. There's that edge and that edge. So we're going to go grab the innermost edge, double click. You should be able to highlight it. If you don't, just hit UL and then click it. You should highlight it. So let me try that. So if I click any of the edges, UL, and then I click, move mouse away, it should show you that orange line. So I'm going to go straight into the move tool and bring it up ever so slightly until I create that, until I'm happy with that gap. Now I'm going to go to subdivision surface and have another look at this. Great. Now let me have a look how that looks like in the render. So I'm going to go straight to the Redshift render and let me press play. There we go. So notice how I've got this indentation now happening here. And if I go down the bottom, I have that one down the bottom as well. There it is. And the top one is there. Now I believe the top one's a little bit wider than the bottom one, so we need to basically make sure they're about the same. So the bottom one's already selected, right? So let me just remove the subdivision surfacing. The bottom one's already selected, so I'm going to grab it and pull it up a little bit more. There. And let me hit subdivision surface. It's still too wide, so let me try to narrow that gap a little bit more. There. Okay, I'm happy with that level of indentation. Now we can always change that later because we are working in a non-destructive mode, so we can always go back and modify that. Okay, so that's that part. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to do the back of the model. So let's go to F5 again and let's go back to standard layout. Now notice how in the picture we have this hole here for the charger. We also have this button here. So what we're going to do is we're going to model this button and also this hole as well. Okay, so that's coming up in the next lesson. Thank you for now and see you later. Bye. Bye.